Welcome to another deep dive into history's greatest mysteries with your favorite podcast, Conspiracy Tapes. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, and today we're embarking on a journey that has captivated humanity for over 2 millennia. We're diving deep into the legend, the speculation, and the tantalizing possibilities surrounding one of history's most enduring enigmas, the lost city of Atlantis. Let me paint you a picture. Somewhere beneath the waves of our vast oceans lies a civilization so advanced, so magnificent, that it makes our modern achievements pale in comparison. A society with grand palaces, engineering marvels, and wealth beyond imagination, all swallowed by the sea in a single catastrophic day and night. This isn't just fantasy. This is the story that has driven explorers to the ends of the earth, inspired countless expeditions, and continues to fuel scientific debate today. But here's what makes this story truly fascinating. It all begins with one man, a Greek philosopher writing over 2,400 years ago, who claimed he wasn't creating fiction at all. He insisted he was recording history. That man was Plato, and his account of Atlantis has become perhaps the most influential piece of speculative history ever written. Today, we're going to peel back the layers of this mystery. We'll explore not just what Plato wrote, but why he wrote it, where his information allegedly came from, and what modern science and archaeology have revealed about the possibilities. We'll journey from ancient Egypt to the Mediterranean, from the Atlantic Ocean to unexpected locations that might hold the key to this puzzle. Love a good mystery? At Scoob, we bring ancient legends and modern discoveries together in quick, gripping episodes that leave you questioning everything. Download the Scoob app now on the App Store or Play Store. Your next adventure is just a tap away. So, settle in, because we're about to explore a story that spans continents, crosses millennia, and might just challenge everything you think you know about our ancient past. Let's start at the beginning, not with Atlantis itself, but with the man who brought its story to the world. Plato, born around 423 BC, was the second in the legendary trio of Greek philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. When Raphael painted his masterpiece, The School of Athens, he placed Plato and Aristotle at the center, with Plato holding a copy of Timaeus, the very work that introduced the world to Atlantis. But here's where things get interesting. Plato wasn't presenting Atlantis as a philosophical allegory or a thought experiment. He claimed it was historical fact, passed down through a remarkable chain of witnesses. The story, according to Plato, originated with the great Athenian lawmaker Solon, who lived about 150 years before Plato's time. Picture this scene. Solon, one of the most respected figures in Athenian history, travels to Egypt around 590 BC. He finds himself in the ancient city of Sais, in the Nile Delta, conversing with elderly Egyptian priests who claim to possess records dating back thousands of years. These priests, guardians of temple archives, supposedly told Solon something that would astonish him. "Oh, Solon, Solon," one priest reportedly said, "you Hellenes are like children, and there is never an old man among you who is a Hellen." When Solon asked what he meant, the priest explained, "I mean to say that your minds are immature. You lack ancestral wisdom passed down through ancient traditions, nor have you acquired any wisdom that is venerable with age." This wasn't just ancient trash talk. The priest was making a profound point about the cyclical nature of human civilization. He explained that humanity repeatedly faces destruction and renewal through floods, fires, earthquakes, and other catastrophes. Each time, knowledge is lost, and the civilizations must start over. But Egypt, protected by the Nile and blessed with stable conditions, had maintained continuous records when other civilizations fell. The priest then revealed something extraordinary. Athens itself had once been a great power, 1,000 years before Egypt's own founding, and this ancient Athens had faced down and defeated the greatest military threat of the ancient world, the Empire of Atlantis. Now, here's where our story becomes a detective tale. This information supposedly passed from Solon to his relative Dropides, then to Dropides' son Critias the Elder, then to his grandson Critias the Younger, and finally to Plato himself through family connections. That's 6 generations of oral transmission before Plato wrote it down. But here's the first red flag for modern skeptics. Plato gives conflicting accounts of how this information survived. In Timaeus, he has Critias claiming he's recalling the story purely from memory, staying up all night trying to remember the details as he heard them from his grandfather. But in Critias, the same character claims he has Solon's original notes from his conversations with the Egyptian priest. Which version is true? Did Solon take detailed notes, or did this incredible story survive purely through oral tradition? For a story this complex and detailed, the distinction matters enormously. Consider the challenges. Solon didn't speak Egyptian and couldn't read hieroglyphs. At best, Plato would have possessed information that was 2 centuries old and third-hand, conveyed by a priest who might have had every reason to impress his distinguished foreign visitor. As one modern scholar put it, such evidence would likely be dismissed by any contemporary jury. But let's not dismiss this too quickly. Remember, recorded history in the 4th century BC was still relatively new. Herodotus, whom Cicero called the father of history, had only begun compiling systematic historical accounts a century before Plato's time. Prior to this, events were commonly preserved in oral narratives, like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. And Plato himself had complex views about written versus oral knowledge. In his dialogue Phaedrus, he has Socrates criticize writing as inferior to memory, arguing that written records can't be questioned and only provide the appearance of wisdom, not true understanding. This brings us to a crucial question that scholars still debate. Was Plato presenting genuine historical tradition, or was he crafting an elaborate philosophical allegory? The answer to this question shapes how we interpret everything that follows. Before we dive into Plato's detailed descriptions, let's explore something fascinating that most people don't know. The word Atlantis itself might be much older than Plato, and it might not even be Greek in origin. Throughout history, cultures around the world have preserved stories of sinking lands and vanished continents. These aren't just European or Mediterranean traditions. They span the globe. Native peoples near Europe and Africa tell of lands disappearing to the west, while Amerindian traditions speak of ancestral homelands across the eastern seas. When Spanish explorers first crossed the Atlantic, these tales were still being told, suggesting they might preserve distant memories of actual geological events. But here's where it gets really intriguing. In Sanskrit, one of the world's oldest languages, there exists a term, Atlantica, which translates to Great Cataclysm. This raises a provocative question. Did the Atlantic Ocean get its name not from the Greek myth of Atlas, son of Zeus, but from much older stories about immense natural disasters that obliterated ancient civilizations? Think about the implications. If this linguistic connection is real, it suggests that memories of catastrophic oceanic events were preserved in human language long before Plato wrote his dialogues. The Atlantic wouldn't be named after a mythological figure, but after actual historical trauma embedded in our collective memory. This theory gains support when we examine similar stories from completely different cultures. In Judeo-Christian Islamic traditions, there's mention of Babalu or Babel, a civilization that existed before recorded history, ultimately destroyed by division and dispersion. In Indian mythology, a civilization called Rutas met its doom through earthquakes before the mighty Himalayas formed. Chinese traditions speak of Mu's destruction by devastating tidal waves and floods. In Peru, survivors of an ancient civilization, the Viracochas, whose name translates as sea foam, supposedly settled and built Tiahuanaco after extraordinary maritime disturbances. These multicultural narratives all point to a large-scale, world-changing event. Whether this represents memories of a forgotten continent where advanced civilizations once stood, or mythologized accounts of genuine geological transformations, is still hotly debated. But the linguistic evidence doesn't stop there. Some researchers argue that Atlas, the figure who supposedly ruled Atlantis, wasn't just a Greek mythological character, but represented something much older. According to these accounts, Atlas possessed profound knowledge of the sea's depths and ruled an expansive kingdom with steep coastlines, a kingdom even larger than the combined continents of Africa and Asia, situated beyond the Pillars of Heracles and separated from distant continents by lush, fruit-bearing islands. This Atlas wasn't just a king. He was supposedly a son of Poseidon, the sea god, and his story intertwines with cosmic conflicts between titans and gods. After Atlantis fell, Atlas was condemned to hold the weight of the heavens on his shoulders for eternity, perhaps a metaphor for bearing the eternal burden of a lost civilization's memory. The parallels between these widespread traditions suggest something remarkable. Either there was significant cultural diffusion in prehistoric times, carrying similar stories across vast distances, or these tales preserve actual memories of global catastrophic events that affected early human civilizations worldwide. Now, let's journey into Plato's actual description of Atlantis and prepare to be amazed by the level of detail he provides. Whether this represents historical memory, pure imagination, or something in between, it's one of the most vivid depictions of an ancient civilization ever recorded. According to Plato, Atlantis was no simple island. It was a complex civilization centered on a remarkable architectural marvel, a series of concentric circular islands separated by rings of water. Picture this in your mind's eye. At the center, a circular island about 12 miles across housing the main city, surrounded by alternating rings of water and land, connected by bridges and canals, an ancient urban planning masterpiece. The royal palace stood at the very center, on an island 5 stadia in diameter, roughly half a mile across. This wasn't just any palace. It underwent continuous embellishment over successive generations, with each new sovereign striving to outdo his predecessor in grandeur. The result was a structure of extraordinary size and beauty. But the engineering is what really captures the imagination. The Atlanteans carved a canal 300 feet wide, 100 feet deep, and stretching over 6 miles to connect the outermost water ring with the sea, creating a harbor that could accommodate the largest vessels of the ancient world. They constructed bridges across the water zones, wide enough for a single trireme to pass, and these bridges were roofed to allow sheltered passage below. The zones themselves were precisely measured. The outermost water ring was 3 stadia wide, followed by a land zone of equal width. The next water and land zones measured 2 stadia each, with the central island surrounded by a zone only 1 stadium across. Surrounding everything was a stone wall, fortified with towers and gates where the sea met the bridges. The construction materials tell their own story of wealth and sophistication. The Atlanteans quarried stones of different colors, white, black, and red, from beneath the central island and surrounding zones. As they quarried, they created dual-purpose structures, dockhouses with roofs made from native stone. Some buildings were simple, while others used intermixed stones for purely decorative purposes. But here's where the description becomes almost fantastical. The walls themselves were covered in metals. Brass was layered over the perimeter of the outermost wall. The next was covered with tin, and the innermost wall encircling the citadel glimmered with orichalcum, a mysterious metal that Plato claims was highly valued in those days, second only to gold. What was orichalcum? Modern scholars have puzzled over this for centuries. Some suggest it was an alloy of copper and zinc, essentially brass. Others propose it was a naturally occurring metal that's now extinct. Still others wonder if Plato simply invented it to emphasize Atlantis's exotic wealth. At the heart of the citadel stood not one, but two magnificent temples. The first was dedicated to Cleito and Poseidon, shielded from public approach by a golden enclosure and revered as the birthplace of the 10 ruling princes. Each year, tribute from the 10 territories was brought here for religious ceremonies. But Poseidon's personal temple was truly breathtaking. Picture a building, a stadium long and half a stadium wide, roughly 600 feet by 300 feet, covered entirely in silver except for its pinnacles, which were gilded with gold. Inside, the ceiling was adorned with ivory, gold, silver, and orichalcum. These precious materials lined the walls, pillars, and floor as well. The centerpiece was a golden statue of Poseidon himself, mounted on a chariot drawn by 6-winged horses, so tall that the god's head nearly touched the temple roof. The sanctuary housed countless other offerings from both private citizens and foreign subjects, demonstrating the empire's vast reach and influence. The city's infrastructure was equally impressive. They made ingenious use of hot and cold springs, building structures around natural fountains and creating an elaborate system of baths. There were separate facilities for royalty, the public, women, and even cattle and horses, each appropriately decorated. Water runoff was channeled through aqueducts, traversing bridges to outer rings, and excess water nourished Poseidon's grove, filled with magnificent trees. Beyond the royal precincts lay another massive wall, beginning at the sea and encircling the entire estate at a distance of about 6 miles from the farthest harbor. The area within this wall bustled with dense habitations, an eclectic mix of ships and traders, contributing to a ceaseless blend of human voices and commerce that continued day and night. This is urban planning and engineering on a scale that rivals anything in the ancient world, or even the modern one. The level of coordination, the massive construction projects, the sophisticated water management systems. If this civilization existed, it would have been truly extraordinary. But what about the people themselves? Plato doesn't just describe buildings and engineering. He paints a picture of an entire civilization, complete with its social structure, values, and ultimate downfall. The Atlanteans, according to Plato, began as a virtuous people. They were descendants of Poseidon through Atlas and his 9 brothers, who became the first 10 kings of Atlantis. The kingdom was structured as a confederation, with Atlas holding supreme authority over the others, while each brother ruled his own territory. These weren't just any territories. Atlas's empire amassed wealth and resources that appeared unparalleled in history. Every conceivable luxury and necessity was available to them, both from within their expansive lands and through trade with distant regions. The island itself was incredibly fertile, supporting diverse wildlife, including a notably large population of elephants, a detail that has puzzled scholars for centuries, since elephants weren't native to most proposed Atlantis locations. The land produced an abundance of resources, fragrant substances including roots, herbs, trees, and aromatic flowers, cultivated fields yielding dry fruits and vegetables, hard-shelled fruits that served as sources of food, drink, and oils, chestnuts and other nuts, and an array of delightful desserts. This fertile island, blessed by a sun-drenched climate, yielded these varied and abundant items in impressive quantities. Deep within the earth, the Atlanteans excavated an array of materials, both mineral and metallic. Besides the mysterious orichalcum, they had access to extensive timber resources and precious metals. The scale of their mining operations must have been enormous to support their elaborate construction projects. Their society was highly sophisticated, with advanced knowledge in multiple fields. The Atlanteans excelled in engineering and agriculture, transforming their vast central plain into a network of canals that nourished the land from surrounding hills. Their architectural achievements included not just the capital city's marvels, but grand palaces, public baths, race courses, temples, and harbor engineering throughout their territories. Militarily, they were formidable. The Atlanteans expanded their conquests westward to distant continents and eastward to regions like Egypt and Italy. Their naval power was particularly impressive. The docks were constantly filled with triremes, fully provisioned and ready for service. Guardhouses were strategically positioned throughout the palace grounds, with the most trusted guards assigned to the inner circles and a select few residing within the citadel itself. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. According to Plato, the Atlanteans didn't remain virtuous forever. Initially, they lived with admirable virtue, resisting the temptations of their considerable wealth. They followed a complex system of laws supposedly established by Poseidon himself, including ceremonial rites involving the sacrifice of bulls. However, as generations passed, their divine nature became diluted. Greed and malice gradually pervaded their society. They became aggressive expansionists, launching campaigns to subdue not just the lands beyond the Pillars of Heracles, but all of Europe and Asia within those straits. This is where Plato's story becomes explicitly political. The Atlanteans threatened to enslave the entire known world, but they met their match in ancient Athens. According to the Egyptian priest's account to Solon, Athens at that time was a bastion of strength and law, known for exemplary governance and military excellence. When all other allies deserted them, the Athenians stood alone against the Atlantean Empire and achieved the impossible. They defeated the greatest military power of the ancient world. But victory came at a terrible cost. Divine retribution followed in the form of catastrophic natural disasters. In a single day and night of earthquakes and floods, both the Athenian army and the entire civilization of Atlantis were destroyed. The warriors were swallowed by the earth, and Atlantis itself disappeared beneath the sea, leaving behind only unnavigable, muddy waters. This narrative structure, virtue corrupted by wealth leading to divine punishment, was a common theme in Greek literature and philosophy. It raises questions about whether Plato was using Atlantis primarily as a moral allegory about the dangers of hubris and imperial overreach. As we examine Plato's account, one question becomes unavoidable. If this is pure fiction, where did he get such specific and vivid details? The answer might lie in actual historical events that occurred during Plato's own lifetime. Enter the story of Helike, a real Greek city whose fate bears striking similarities to Atlantis. In the winter of 373 BC, Helike was a flourishing capital city of the Achaean League, located on a coastal plain near the Gulf of Corinth. According to historical records, the city vanished overnight in circumstances that eerily parallel Plato's Atlantis account. The historian Aelian recorded that signs of impending catastrophe were observed days in advance. Various creatures, mice, martens, snakes, centipedes, beetles, and others, evacuated en masse to higher ground. This ominous exodus was followed by a severe earthquake during the night that demolished Helike, causing tragic loss of life among its inhabitants. But the earthquake was just the beginning. At daybreak, survivors attempting to escape were overwhelmed by a massive wave that obliterated any remaining traces of the city. The Greek geographer Strabo later recounted that the entire region, along with Helike, had disappeared from sight. An expedition of 2,000 Achaeans was unable to retrieve any remains of the deceased. In Helike's sacred area dedicated to Poseidon, only the tops of trees remained visible above the water. The parallels are striking. A prosperous city associated with Poseidon, destroyed by earthquake and flood in a single day and night, leaving only underwater ruins. Even more intriguingly, the catastrophe claimed 10 Spartan ships anchored nearby, reinforcing the maritime associations. Eratosthenes, the famous Greek geographer who visited about 150 years after Helike's destruction, learned from local ferrymen about a bronze statue of Poseidon that still stood partially submerged in the water. This statue, grasping a miniature seahorse, was notorious for entangling fishing nets. Another geographer, Pausanias, attributed Helike's destruction to Poseidon's wrath, suggesting divine retribution for the city's refusal to grant a statue of the god to travelers from Asia Minor. Here's the crucial connection. When Helike vanished in 373 BC, Plato was living in Athens, less than 100 miles away, teaching at his famous academy. By this time, he had likely already completed the Republic and was working on ideas that would become Timaeus. News of a significant Greek city's destruction by earthquake and tsunami, a city associated with Poseidon, would certainly have reached Plato. If Atlantis was indeed an early example of historical fiction, as many scholars suggest, then Helike's fate might have provided the perfect contemporary model. Plato could have taken this real disaster and projected it backward in time, expanding it into a cautionary tale about imperial hubris and moral decay. But this raises another question. Despite abundant historical documentation, tangible archaeological evidence of Helike remained elusive for centuries. The great archaeologist Spiridon Marinatos dedicated over 2 decades to searching for the lost city. Even after his celebrated discovery of Akrotiri on Santorini gained worldwide recognition in 1967, Marinatos continued his quest for Helike until his death 7 years later. The parallels between the search for Helike and the search for Atlantis are instructive. Both were well-documented ancient cities that supposedly vanished beneath the sea. Both were associated with Poseidon. Both were said to have been destroyed by earthquake and flood. Yet, while Helike was unquestionably real, physical evidence proved remarkably difficult to find. This doesn't prove Atlantis was real, but it does suggest that Plato's account, whether historical or fictional, was grounded in realistic understanding of how civilizations could vanish and how difficult they could be to rediscover. Fascinated by the fine line between myth and history, Scoob dives into the stories behind the stories, blending science, legend, and discovery in short, immersive episodes with AI-powered podcasts. Download the Scoob app now on the App Store or Play Store and follow the trail of the ancients. Let's zoom back in on the heart of the mystery. After exploring the broader context of lost cities and ancient cataclysms, it's time to examine one of the most compelling pieces of the puzzle, one that bridges myth and recorded history. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Atlantis mystery involves connections to the Minoan civilization of ancient Crete, connections that predate Plato by over a millennium and raise fascinating questions about cultural memory and symbolic transmission. The Minoans, who flourished from approximately 2700 to 1100 BC, were a sophisticated maritime civilization known for their elaborate palaces, advanced urban planning, and distinctive art. Their sudden decline around 1450 BC, possibly triggered by the catastrophic eruption of the volcano on nearby Thera, modern Santorini, has led many researchers to suggest they might have inspired Plato's Atlantis tale. But here's where things get really interesting. Minoan art contains symbols and motifs that seem to echo Atlantean imagery in ways that are difficult to explain if Plato simply invented the entire story. Consider a particular Minoan rhyton, an elegant ceremonial vase dating from around 1500 BC. This vase features the distinctive marine style that Minoan artists were famous for, with elaborate sea-themed motifs. But one detail stands out: an unusual starfish design with triple concentric circles, a trait not found in real starfish. This starfish, with its 15 radiating rays, resembles a sun beneath the waters, symbolically representing what researchers describe as a sunken terrestrial sun. The imagery aligns remarkably with the concept of Atlantis as a fallen sun empire, drawing parallels to solar symbolism found in other ancient cultures. What makes this particularly significant is the timing. This vase was created over a millennium before Plato was born, completely ruling out the possibility that Minoan artists were influenced by his writings. Moreover, the decoration predates the catastrophic Thera eruption that devastated Minoan Crete, so the Minoans couldn't have based their art on their own impending disaster. The Minoan marine-style art reveals other intriguing connections. Their depictions include not just the unusual starfish, but giant octopi, murex shellfish, dolphins, and what appears to be sargasso seaweed. While most of these creatures were familiar in Mediterranean waters, sargasso is not native to that region. It's characteristic of what ancient geographers like Claudius Ptolemy called the Prasotum Mare, or Sea of Sargasso, referring to distant oceanic regions. This raises a provocative question. How did Minoan artists become familiar with oceanic flora and fauna that didn't exist in their local waters? Were these purely imaginative depictions, or do they represent cultural memories or knowledge transmitted from elsewhere? Some researchers argue that these symbols were cleverly disguised representations of Atlantean concepts, hidden in what appeared to be natural marine imagery. According to this interpretation, a Minoan artist wouldn't depict a real starfish in such an unusual manner, especially given the abundance of typical starfish in Cretan waters. Instead, the starfish's triple circles and sun-like appearance might represent deeper symbolic meaning, an emblematic representation of a legendary sunken civilization. The implications are staggering. If this interpretation is correct, it suggests that knowledge or cultural memory of an Atlantis-like civilization was present in the ancient Mediterranean world long before Plato, transmitted through artistic symbols and maritime traditions rather than written records. This connects to a broader pattern of ancient symbolism. The combination of solar imagery with oceanic themes appears in various Mediterranean cultures, often associated with concepts of paradise lost or civilizations claimed by the sea. The symbol of a sun emerging from ocean waters, which inspired modern Atlantis researchers, might represent not just mythological concepts, but preserved cultural memories of actual historical events. The evidence doesn't prove that Atlantis existed, but it does suggest that Plato's account wasn't created in a cultural vacuum. Whether through cultural diffusion, shared mythological archetypes, or preserved historical memories, elements of the Atlantis story seem to have deeper roots in Mediterranean civilization than previously recognized. As we've seen, the mystery of Atlantis extends far beyond Plato's original account. Over the centuries, researchers have proposed dozens of potential locations and alternative explanations, each offering fascinating insights into how ancient civilizations might have preserved and transmitted historical memories. One compelling theory involves the ancient maps that began appearing in the 15th century, particularly the work of Venetian cartographer Zuane Pizzigano in 1424. Pizzigano's chart depicts two large islands in the Atlantic, Antilia, an almost rectangular landmass, and Satanaz to its north. These mysterious islands continued appearing on world maps until the 18th century, with some charts maintaining their existence even into the 19th century. What makes this particularly intriguing is the precise positioning of these phantom islands. Map researcher George Furman discovered that Antilia and Satanes align remarkably with the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a massive submarine mountain range that forms part of the world's tectonic architecture. Furman proposes a fascinating geological explanation. During the Ice Age, the immense weight of continental ice sheets might have caused isostatic compensation, temporarily elevating the peaks and plateaus of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge above sea level for perhaps 40,000 years. As glaciers retreated and massive meltwaters rejoined the oceans, this geological balance would have shifted. The ridge could have subsided between 9,500 to 8,000 BC, remarkably close to Plato's timeline for Atlantis' destruction. If Furman is correct, these medieval maps might preserve ancient geographical knowledge of lands that actually existed during the Ice Age. Another geographical theory focuses on North Africa, specifically the region around ancient Lake Tritonis. The historian Diodorus Siculus wrote about a highly civilized people called the Atlanteans who lived west of this lake. According to his account, they were eventually conquered by Libyan Amazons, but this occurred before the 3rd millennium BC. Lake Tritonis itself was a substantial body of water, reportedly spanning 900 square miles during classical times. Today, it has dwindled into the salt marshes of Chott Melger and Chott el Djerid. If this region once housed a thriving civilization, several natural phenomena could explain its destruction. Extraordinary rainfall, high tides combined with strong winds, coastal land subsidence, or the geological events that formed the lake itself. The displaced inhabitants might have migrated in various directions, carrying their stories with them. Some could have moved west toward Morocco, others south across the Sahara, some east toward Egypt, and a few might have remained by the lake shores, preserving memories of their lost homeland. Modern statistical analysis has also entered the search. Researcher Michael Hübner applied mathematical techniques to Plato's descriptions, concluding that if Atlantis existed, it most likely sank near Morocco's Atlantic coast. This theory aligns with a naturally occurring circular structure near Agadir, Morocco, whose dimensions remarkably match those Plato gave for Atlantis. The Riche structure in Mauritania has also captured attention. This natural formation consists of concentric circles visible from space, leading some researchers to wonder if it might have inspired ancient descriptions of Atlantis's distinctive architecture. While the structure is clearly geological rather than artificial, its resemblance to Plato's description is striking. Perhaps most intriguingly, some researchers have looked beyond terrestrial explanations entirely. The possibility of a catastrophic meteorite impact, far larger than the one that created Arizona's meteor crater, could potentially account for worldwide devastation stories found in multiple cultures. Such cataclysms appear in narratives from the Epic of Gilgamesh to biblical flood accounts, suggesting that significant natural events might have informed or inspired many ancient legends, including Atlantis. The variety of these theories reflects both the enduring appeal of the Atlantis story and the genuine mysteries surrounding ancient civilizations and geological changes. Whether any of these theories captures the truth about Atlantis, they demonstrate how seriously modern researchers take the possibility that Plato's account might preserve some kernel of historical reality. The search for Atlantis has evolved dramatically since the 19th century, when U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, which many consider the second most important work on the subject after Plato's original dialogues. Donnelly argued for a historical basis for Atlantis, proposing it as a significant civilization whose culture influenced regions worldwide. Modern archaeology has brought both sophisticated tools and rigorous skepticism to the question. When archaeologist Spiridon Marinatos discovered the preserved Bronze Age city of Akrotiri on Santorini in 1967, many saw it as potential evidence for Atlantis-like civilizations. Akrotiri, buried under volcanic ash from the massive Thera eruption around 1600 BC, revealed a sophisticated urban society with advanced architecture, indoor plumbing, and elaborate frescoes. The parallels were tantalizing. A prosperous island civilization destroyed by volcanic catastrophe in a single day, leaving behind impressive ruins. The timing roughly coincided with the decline of Minoan civilization, and the scale of the Thera eruption was enormous, probably larger than any volcanic event in recorded history. Santorini's modern shape, a crescent-shaped island surrounding a water-filled caldera, even resembles Plato's description of Atlantis's concentric rings of land and water. The ancient city's advanced urban planning, with its sophisticated drainage systems and multi-story buildings, demonstrated that Bronze Age civilizations could achieve remarkable engineering feats. However, serious problems remain with identifying Akrotiri or broader Minoan civilization as Atlantis. The timeline is off by thousands of years, the location is wrong according to Plato's specifications, and the scale is much smaller than his descriptions suggest. Plato specifically placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Heracles, Strait of Gibraltar, in the Atlantic Ocean, not in the Mediterranean. More recently, Spanish archaeologist Juan Vilarias Robles led a multidisciplinary team investigating theories proposed by German physicist Rainer Kuhne. Their research, published in academic journals, has brought scientific rigor to what was once purely speculative archaeology. They've used satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and systematic excavation techniques to investigate potential Atlantis sites. Dr. Anton Mifsud has proposed that Malta might hold clues, suggesting that Plato's descriptions of canals might reflect Malta's mysterious ancient cart ruts, parallel grooves carved into rock that crisscross the islands. While these ruts are clearly much later than any proposed Atlantis timeline, they demonstrate how ancient peoples could undertake large-scale landscape modification projects. Geophysics professor Stavros Papameranopoulos has long analyzed the intersection of myth and history in Plato's account. His work suggests that even if Atlantis as described never existed, Plato's narrative might incorporate genuine historical memories of Bronze Age civilizations and catastrophic events. Modern geology has also contributed crucial insights. We now understand that sea levels rose dramatically at the end of the last ice age, flooding vast coastal areas where early civilizations might have developed. The Persian Gulf, the Black Sea, and coastal regions worldwide were radically transformed by post-glacial flooding, potentially erasing evidence of early human settlements. Perhaps most importantly, modern archaeology has revealed that ancient civilizations were far more sophisticated and far-reaching than previously imagined. From Göbekli Tepe in Turkey to recently discovered civilizations in the Amazon, we're constantly revising our understanding of human capabilities in prehistoric times. This doesn't prove Atlantis existed, but it does suggest that dismissing Plato's account as pure fantasy might be premature. Whether Atlantis was a real place, a composite of multiple civilizations, or a brilliant literary creation, it continues to push the boundaries of archaeological investigation and historical imagination. As we reach the end of our journey through the Atlantis mystery, we're left not with definitive answers, but with a deeper appreciation for the complexity of the questions involved. The story of Atlantis operates simultaneously on multiple levels, as literature, as history, as archaeology, as geology, and as a mirror reflecting our own relationship with lost civilizations and environmental catastrophe. Consider what we've discovered in our investigation. We have Plato's remarkably detailed account, supposedly based on Egyptian records transmitted through Solon. We have linguistic connections suggesting that memories of oceanic catastrophes might be embedded in our oldest languages. We have Minoan art containing symbols that seem to reference Atlantean concepts a millennium before Plato wrote. We have medieval maps depicting phantom islands that align with underwater geological features. We have multiple ancient cultures preserving similar stories of advanced civilizations destroyed by flood and earthquake. None of this proves that Atlantis existed as Plato described it, but it does suggest that his account didn't emerge from nowhere. Whether through cultural diffusion, shared mythological archetypes, preserved historical memories, or some combination of these factors, elements of the Atlantis story seem to have much deeper roots than simple philosophical allegory. The search for Atlantis has driven genuine scientific advances. It has motivated archaeological expeditions that discovered real lost civilizations, even if they weren't Atlantis itself. It has pushed researchers to develop new techniques for underwater archaeology, satellite imaging, and geological analysis. It has forced us to reconsider our assumptions about the sophistication of ancient civilizations and the impact of natural catastrophes on human history. Perhaps most importantly, the Atlantis story serves as a powerful reminder of civilization's fragility. Plato's account describes a society that achieved unprecedented wealth and technological advancement, only to destroy itself through hubris and moral corruption. In our own era of climate change, nuclear weapons, and global environmental degradation, this message feels remarkably contemporary. The Atlantis mystery also highlights the complex relationship between oral tradition and written history. Plato's account, whether historical or fictional, demonstrates how stories could be preserved and transmitted across generations, carrying within them both factual information and symbolic meaning that modern readers might struggle to decode. Modern researchers like Tony O'Connell, founder of Atlantopedia, continue cataloging and analyzing the hundreds of proposed Atlantis locations and theories. Their work reveals not just the enduring appeal of the mystery, but the genuine scientific questions that surround ancient civilizations, geological catastrophes, and the preservation of historical memory. As we look to the future, new technologies offer unprecedented opportunities to explore these questions. Advanced sonar mapping can reveal underwater structures that previous generations couldn't detect. Satellite archaeology can identify artificial features beneath vegetation or sand. DNA analysis can trace the migration patterns of ancient peoples. Climate reconstruction can show us exactly what environmental changes occurred at the end of the Ice Age. Whether any of these tools will ever locate Plato's Atlantis remains an open question, but they will certainly continue revealing the rich complexity of human civilization in prehistoric times, potentially uncovering lost societies that, while they may not be Atlantis, will be remarkable in their own right. The story of Atlantis ultimately transcends the question of its historical existence. It represents humanity's eternal fascination with lost golden ages, our desire to understand our place in the vast sweep of geological time, and our need to grapple with the consequences of our own actions. Whether Plato intended it or not, he created a story that continues to challenge us, inspire us, and remind us that even the mightiest civilizations can vanish beneath the waves. In that sense, perhaps the greatest value of the Atlantis story isn't in solving the mystery of whether it existed, but in maintaining our sense of wonder about the past and our commitment to learning from it. As long as humans look out over the ocean and wonder what lies beneath the waves, as long as we're curious about our ancestors and concerned about our future, the story of Atlantis will continue to captivate us. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there beneath the Atlantic swells, the real answer is still waiting to be discovered. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, and this is Conspiracy Tapes. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's greatest mysteries. The story of Atlantis continues to evolve as new discoveries reshape our understanding of the ancient world. Whether you believe Plato was recording history or crafting allegory, there's no denying the power of a story that has captivated humanity for over 2 millennia. What do you think? Does Atlantis represent preserved memories of a real civilization, or is it pure philosophical fiction? The evidence, as we've seen, can support multiple interpretations. Perhaps that's exactly what makes this mystery so enduring and so human. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember that sometimes the most important discoveries come not from finding definitive answers, but from asking better questions. Curious minds never rest, and at Scoob, neither do the stories. Dive into more mysteries, myths, and mind-expanding insights with short, bingeable episodes anytime, anywhere. Download the Scoob app now on the App Store or Play Store and feed your curiosity daily. The search for Atlantis continues.